I still remember the look on my brother's face the day I arrived in a taxi. It was our mother's 65th birthday party, and nearly the entire family had gathered outside my parents' house. Cars lined both sides of the street. My older brother, Eric, stood proudly beside his brand-new luxury SUV, laughing with our cousins. Then my taxi pulled up. The moment I stepped out, Eric smirked. 37 years old and still taking taxis, he said loudly. A few relatives chuckled. I forced a smile. Good to see you too. Eric shook his head. Come on, Jason. At least pretend you're successful. The laughter got louder. Then something strange happened. The driver stepped out. An older man in a sharp navy suit. Not a uniform. Not casual clothes. A suit. He walked around the taxi and opened my door personally. Suddenly Eric stopped laughing. His smile disappeared. The driver's eyes locked onto him. For a second, neither man spoke. Then the driver nodded politely. Good evening, Mr. Bennett. Eric looked pale. Very pale. I noticed it immediately. The driver returned to the car and left. Nobody said anything. But Eric watched that taxi until it disappeared around the corner. And for the first time in my life, my brother looked afraid. I didn't know it yet. But that moment would uncover a secret that nearly destroyed our family. And it would make me believe my own brother had betrayed me in the worst possible way. At the party, Eric acted strangely. Every few minutes he checked his phone. He barely spoke. Whenever I approached him, he found an excuse to walk away. It wasn't like him. Eric loved attention. He was confident. Loud. Successful. At least that's what everyone believed. After dinner, I found him standing alone on the back porch. What's wrong with you? I asked. What do you mean? You've been acting weird ever since I got here. His jaw tightened. Nothing's wrong. Then why did you look like you'd seen a ghost when the driver showed up? His face instantly hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Then he walked away. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because 2 weeks later, my father called. Jason, have you talked to Eric lately? No. Why? He borrowed money again. I sighed. That wasn't surprising. Eric had always spent more than he earned. Expensive watches. Expensive vacations. Expensive cars. He cared deeply about appearances. How much? I asked. There was silence. Then Dad answered. 30,000. I nearly dropped my phone. What? I know. Dad sounded exhausted. Your mother doesn't know. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Eric owned a successful real estate company. At least that's what he'd told everyone. Why would he need $30,000? That question stayed in my head. Then more clues appeared. One after another. A month later, I saw Eric meeting someone in a coffee shop. I wasn't spying. I was simply grabbing coffee before work. But when I looked through the window, I froze. Eric was sitting with the same man who had driven my taxi. The man in the navy suit. They looked tense. Very tense. Eric slid an envelope across the table. The driver opened it. Looked inside. Then shook his head. Eric buried his face in his hands. My stomach tightened. What was going on? Debt? Blackmail? Something worse? I almost walked inside. But before I could, both men stood up and left through separate exits. The mystery only deepened. Over the following weeks, strange things kept happening. Eric missed family gatherings. Ignored calls. Cancelled plans. Mom cried more than once. I don't know what's happening to him. Dad looked worried. And then I found something that changed everything. A receipt. It happened accidentally. Eric had left his jacket at my parents' house. Mom asked me to return it. While carrying it, something slipped from the pocket. A receipt. From a private medical facility. The amount made my heart stop. $18,400. I stared at the paper. Why would Eric spend that much money at a medical center? My mind raced. Then I saw another name printed on the document. The same man who drove the taxi. Suddenly my pulse quickened. What connection did they have? Why were they spending huge amounts of money together? And why was Eric hiding it? That night I couldn't sleep. Every clue pointed toward something secret. Something serious. Then came the phone call that pushed me over the edge. A week later, I visited my parents unexpectedly. As I entered the kitchen, I heard my father speaking on the phone. His voice sounded angry. No, Eric. I can't keep helping you. Silence. Then Dad spoke again. How much do you need this time? My heart sank. More money. More secrets. More lies. After hanging up, Dad looked defeated. Another loan? I asked. He nodded. I felt anger rising inside me. For years I had defended Eric. For years I had believed he was successful. Now it looked like everything was a lie. But the worst clue arrived 3 days later. And after seeing it, I became convinced my brother was hiding something unforgivable. Because I followed him one evening. And what I discovered outside a small building across town made me question everything I thought I knew about my own family. What I saw that night would lead directly to a confrontation neither of us would ever forget. And by the time it happened, I would be almost certain my brother had betrayed us all. What was Eric doing with the mysterious taxi owner, and why was he secretly spending tens of thousands of dollars while begging our father for money? The answer seemed obvious, until I learned the truth. The moment I saw my brother step out of his car that night, I knew something was wrong. I had followed him across town. Something I never thought I'd do. But weeks of secrets, lies, mysterious meetings, and borrowed money had pushed me to my limit. Eric parked outside a small brick building near the edge of the city. There was no sign. No company name. No advertisements. Nothing. Just a plain building with dark windows. I stayed across the street and watched. A few minutes later, the same man from the taxi arrived. The man in the navy suit. The man connected to the medical receipts. The man who made Eric nervous. They entered the building together. My heart pounded. I waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. Finally, they came out. And that's when I saw it. Eric handed the man a thick envelope. Again. The man opened it. Looked inside. Then shook his head. Exactly like before. Eric looked devastated. Not angry. Not frustrated. Devastated. The man placed a hand on his shoulder. Then they separated. I couldn't take it anymore. The next morning I confronted him. I drove straight to his office. When his assistant told me he was busy, I ignored her and walked in. Eric looked shocked. Jason? I slammed the medical receipt onto his desk. His face immediately changed. The color drained from it. What is this? I demanded. He stared silently. What are you hiding? Jason. No. I pointed at the receipt. You're borrowing money from Dad. I pointed toward the window. You're meeting strange people. I threw another receipt onto his desk. You're spending thousands at medical facilities. My voice rose. And now you're handing cash to some guy in secret. Several employees outside looked through the glass walls. But I didn't care. For months I had defended him. For months I had worried about him. Now I wanted answers. Tell me the truth. Eric stood slowly. His eyes looked exhausted. Older somehow. I can't. That answer lit a fire inside me. You can't? No. You mean you won't? He looked away. That hurt more than anything. Because it felt like confirmation. People hide the truth when they're guilty. And in that moment, I was almost certain he was guilty. You've been lying to all of us. Silence. Dad keeps giving you money. Silence. Mom cries every night. Silence. I shook my head. I don't even know who you are anymore. For a second, pain flashed across his face. Real pain. Then it vanished. If that's what you think, he said quietly, I can't stop you. I laughed bitterly. You don't have to. Then I walked out. That night, I told my parents everything. Every clue. Every meeting. Every receipt. Every lie. My mother cried. My father looked crushed. Neither of them defended Eric. That scared me. Because deep down, I hoped someone would. Days passed. Then weeks. The family slowly began turning against him. Cousins stopped inviting him to events. Aunts whispered behind his back. Even longtime friends started keeping their distance. And Eric? He accepted it. He never argued. Never explained. Never defended himself. That somehow made everything worse. Then came the final clue. The clue that convinced me beyond any doubt. One afternoon my father called. His voice was shaking. Jason. What happened? It's Eric. My stomach dropped. What now? He sold the lake cabin. I froze. The cabin. Our grandfather's cabin. The one place that held every childhood memory we shared. Fishing trips. Summer vacations. Family holidays. It was priceless to us. Tell me that's not true. Dad sounded heartbroken. He sold it yesterday. I couldn't believe it. That cabin had belonged to our family for nearly 60 years. Eric had no right. No right. For the first time in my life. I hated my brother. The next family gathering exploded. Everyone was there. Everyone except Eric. Until he walked through the door. The room went silent. Mom looked hurt. Dad looked angry. And I looked ready to explode. You sold Grandpa's cabin. Eric nodded. No excuses. No explanation. Just a nod. Something inside me snapped. How could you? Silence. Do you know what that place meant to us? Silence. You've taken money from Dad. Silence. You've lied for months. Silence. You've destroyed this family. My mother started crying. Several relatives looked away. Nobody defended him. Nobody. Because by then, we all believed the same thing. Eric had become selfish. Greedy. Dishonest. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Then he said something that stopped the room cold. I know you all hate me. Nobody spoke. He swallowed hard. And honestly. His voice cracked. I don't blame you. For the first time, I noticed tears in his eyes. Real tears. Not anger. Not guilt. Pain. Pure pain. Then he stood up. Slowly. Looked around the room. And whispered something I'll never forget. One day you'll understand why I did it. Then he walked out. My mother collapsed into a chair crying. Dad looked broken. And I sat there convinced my brother had destroyed everything. 3 days later. The truth arrived. Not from Eric. Not from my parents. From the man who owned the taxi. The mysterious man who had been at the center of every clue. The man I believed was helping my brother hide something terrible. When he knocked on my door that morning, I had no idea he was about to reveal a secret that would make me ashamed of every accusation I had ever made. And when I learned where every dollar had gone, I wished I could take back every word. Why had Eric sold the family cabin, borrowed thousands of dollars, attended secret medical appointments, and met the mysterious taxi owner in secret? The answer wasn't betrayal. It was something so heartbreaking that it would change the meaning of every clue forever. The knock came at exactly 9:12 on a Tuesday morning. I opened my front door expecting a delivery. Instead, I found the man from the taxi. The same man who had haunted every suspicion. The same man I believed had helped my brother destroy our family. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "Jason Bennett?" I nodded. "My name is Samuel Hayes." His voice sounded tired. Not threatening. Not defensive. Just tired. "I think we need to talk about your brother." The moment he said those words, anger returned. "I have nothing to say about Eric." Samuel looked down. "Please." Something in his expression made me hesitate. A few minutes later, we sat across from each other in my kitchen. The silence felt heavy. Finally, Samuel reached into a leather folder. He pulled out several documents. Then he placed them in front of me. I looked down. And froze. Medical records. Dozens of them. Names. Dates. Treatment plans. Hospital bills. I didn't understand. Then I saw one name. Emily Bennett. My niece. Eric's daughter. My 10-year-old niece. My heart stopped. What is this? Samuel took a deep breath. Emily has been sick for almost a year. The room suddenly felt smaller. What? His eyes filled with sadness. A rare condition. I stared at him. Unable to process the words. Why didn't anyone tell us? Samuel looked away. Because your brother didn't want anyone to know. My stomach twisted. Nothing made sense. Why? Samuel leaned forward. Because Eric was terrified. I sat silently. He didn't want your parents spending their retirement savings. He didn't want family members borrowing money. He didn't want anyone carrying the burden. I couldn't speak. Samuel slid another document toward me. The amount at the bottom made me feel sick. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Treatment costs. Specialists. Medication. Emergency care. Everything suddenly began connecting inside my mind. The loans from Dad. The medical receipts. The missing money. The stress. The fear. The secret meetings. My chest tightened. No. Samuel nodded slowly. Yes. I felt cold. Very cold. The room blurred slightly. Then Samuel delivered the truth that shattered me completely. The money wasn't for him. My throat tightened. The money was for Emily. I covered my mouth. Every accusation I'd made echoed through my head. Every judgment. Every assumption. Every cruel word. And suddenly they felt unbearable. Then came the worst part. Samuel handed me another document. Property records. I stared at them. The family cabin. The cabin Eric sold. My hands began shaking. Why are you showing me this? Samuel swallowed. Because your brother didn't sell it to become rich. I couldn't breathe. He sold it because Emily's insurance stopped covering part of her treatment. The words hit me like a truck. For months I had convinced myself Eric was selfish, greedy, dishonest. But the truth was worse. Much worse. He had been sacrificing everything. Everything. His savings. His business. His reputation. His relationships. His image. Even the family cabin. All to save his little girl. And he let us hate him. I looked at Samuel. Why? Samuel's eyes became glassy. Because Eric said he'd rather lose people's respect than watch his daughter lose her future. The room fell silent. I felt physically sick. Then Samuel told me who he really was. Not a business partner. Not a blackmailer. Not a criminal. Not a debt collector. He was the owner of a transportation company. A wealthy businessman. Years earlier, Eric had helped him during a financial crisis. Saved his company. Refused compensation. When Emily became ill, Samuel learned about it. And quietly stepped in to help. The taxi? It wasn't a taxi at all. It belonged to Samuel's private transportation company. The reason Eric looked nervous at Mom's birthday wasn't fear. It was embarrassment. Because Samuel knew the truth. A truth Eric had desperately tried to hide from everyone else. Suddenly I remembered that day. The driver's expression. The strange tension. The sadness in Eric's eyes. I had misunderstood all of it. Every single thing. I looked down at the papers. And for the first time in months, I cried. Not for myself. For my brother. The brother I had abandoned when he needed support most. The brother carrying a burden too heavy for one person. The brother who stood alone while we all judged him. 3 hours later I drove straight to his house. I didn't call first. I didn't text. I just drove. When Eric opened the door, he looked exhausted. Older than I remembered. There were dark circles under his eyes. His shoulders sagged. And for the first time, I saw how much pain he'd been hiding. Neither of us spoke. Then I said the only thing that mattered. I'm sorry. His eyes immediately filled with tears. Mine did too. I know everything. Silence. Then Eric looked away. For several seconds he couldn't speak. Finally he whispered. Emily deserves privacy. I nodded. I know. More silence. Then I stepped forward and hugged him. And something broke inside both of us. Years of pride. Months of anger. All gone. My brother cried into my shoulder. I cried too. And neither of us cared. A week later our entire family gathered again. This time the truth was known. Mom cried when she saw Emily. Dad apologized to Eric. Our relatives apologized too. Nobody could believe what he'd sacrificed. But Eric didn't want praise. He never had. He only wanted his daughter to be okay. Months later, Emily's health improved. The treatment started working. Slowly. Steadily. Hope returned. One evening I sat beside my brother watching the sunset. The same brother I had nearly lost. The same brother I had wrongly accused. After a long silence, I asked him something. Why didn't you tell us? Eric smiled sadly. Then he spoke words I'll carry forever. Because love isn't always loud. He looked toward the horizon. Sometimes love looks like sacrifice nobody sees. I never forgot that. Because life taught me something important. The people carrying the heaviest burdens often make the least noise. The person who looks guilty may actually be fighting a battle they cannot explain. And sometimes, the greatest acts of love happen in complete silence. Today Emily is healthy. Our family is closer than ever. And whenever I remember the day my brother laughed at me arriving in that taxi, I remember something else too. How easy it is to judge. And how important it is to understand before we do. Because the truth behind someone's actions may be far more beautiful than we ever imagined. The strongest people aren't the ones who tell everyone what they're carrying. They're the ones who quietly carry it anyway.